to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch-Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Clay Chournos, the Director of Athletics at Bear River High School in Tremont. Actually, it's probably Garland, Utah. It's the official.
Technically
suburban,
Garland, yep.
Suburban Tremont.
Welcome
to the podcast, Clay.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our international audience where you grew up, where you went to school, your first job, etc.
Gotcha. Well, I actually grew up here. I'm from Bear River. My parents are from here, and my dad's a sheep rancher, and my mom was an educator. And so I grew up here, went to Bear River High School. I graduated in way back in the 90s, early 90s, 91. Played athletics here, had a great experience. And then I did coach a little bit at Northridge High School under my the high school coach, football coach that I played under here when he went to Mike Roski when he went to Northridge. And then first jobs were here at the high school coaching baseball and football. And then I got a job teaching in the school district and was able to continue that. Moved to the high school after 1 year at an intermediate school. Was the head baseball coach for 9 years, and then moved into administration and was out of the high school for about 7 years. And then I've been back here as an assistant principal and now the AD for the last 6 years. So yeah, that's kind of the background.
What's it like working at your alma mater, different than growing up and playing there?
It's definitely different. It has its challenges. It's interesting because we have a lot of staff and actually a lot of coaching staff that are graduates from Bear River High School. We have a significant number, and I have those conversations with those guys a lot. That it's sometimes people still see you as the little kid that was, getting in trouble with whatever when they were 15 and 16 years old. They have a hard time seeing you as an adult that's been through a lot, has a lot of experience with whatever you're coaching. So sometimes that's hard to overcome, but overall I love it. It's a great place to live. I love the people that are here. Genuinely, they support athletics. They support kids. We have a huge support at our high school. We were able to put in a turf field at our high school really simply because of about 4 or 5 different family businesses that are in Tremont. We don't have the huge businesses that donate a lot. These are just people that have family businesses, and we're able to help us out that way. And so it's very, very positive generally town, and they show up. If we happen to be in a playoff game, they'll shut down the town to go watch, and it's still that small town feel, which is really nice.
I have fond memories, obviously before your time, but I was in the 80s. I was at Jordan High coaching early AD years, but I remember for years and years in football, we were home and away first or second game of the year with Bear River, all my growing up years.
Yeah, I remember my senior year because I missed an extra point, and then you guys beat us by 1 at our home place senior year. We ended up then running the table and playing for a state championship after that. But yeah, I remember playing some good games against Jordan. Those were fun.
Yeah, well, we'd rather be lucky than good. That's all I can say. Let's talk about your youth sports in Tremont. And I'm sure there was quite an opportunity for you to play probably baseball, football, basketball, maybe some of the other stuff. Talk about that and what led you into possibly getting back into coaching and staying at your alma mater.
Yeah, growing up, it was not a lot. We had a lot of city league stuff. Growing up, when I was growing up, there was Little League baseball. We did have a Little League football program, but as I started having kids, the opportunities for them to do things just increased tenfold. There's all kinds of comp teams that we have here. The Little League football has increased to the point where there's sometimes 2 and 3 teams per age group, which is really kind of unheard of for a town. As we're not really that big, but we get a lot of kids that want to participate that way. It's been fantastic to see just how much lacrosse has taken off. Our girls lacrosse team is fabulous, and they have a massive following in the youth programs leading up to high school. And even our boys lacrosse is getting a lot more participation that way. The cities have done a lot better job lately of trying to make sure that the kids have opportunities there and those types of things. But honestly, I didn't really consider coaching all that much until I returned home off my mission, and my old baseball coach called me one day and said, "Hey, I need a JV coach. What's your availability for this coming spring?" And I didn't really have a job and wasn't going to school yet, and so I'm like, "Well, I can come help," and just fell in love with coaching. And so that's what really led me. Then I decided that's what I wanted to do, is teach and coach, and I kind of followed my mom into education, and it's been great. So that was really what motivated me. Once I got into coaching, it's just, coaching it's addicting. And I just love being around kids, and I love the energy that they bring. And I loved practice, and I just love doing all that stuff. And so that just seems like a natural, progression for me. Once I got into administration, and that kind of went away, which was tough. I didn't like that all that much. They took that aspect away. But then after Van Park decided to retire, our district sort of revamped the way that they do our athletic director stuff, and I was able to get that job along with the assistant principal job. So it's been great. I've had a great time, and hopefully we're making a difference here in our programs.
Great answer. Thanks for sharing. Let's talk for a minute about the mentors in your life. Obviously, you've mentioned one, following your mom into education, but talk about possibly your parents or some other people that have had a big influence on you.
Yeah, my mom for sure. When it comes to education, she was a teacher for a long time, and then she was a principal at a intermediate school for a little while. And so, yeah, she was definitely a mentor for education and just a real positive influence in my life. My dad, obviously, he's a sheep rancher, but was always there when I was playing sports, and even when I'm coaching, when I was coaching, he'd show up all the time just as support. So obviously, those two are big. I would say Coach Park, Van Park, that was here he was our athletic director here for 16 years. But he was also the head basketball coach here at the same time I was coaching baseball. And he and I had a great relationship, still have a great relationship of when I needed something, I would go to him and ask, because I just felt like he had sage advice all the time, and still does. So he's still one of my mentors, I think. Mike Roski was my football coach in high school, and then moved to Northridge High School for a little while. And even as I was coaching, started my coaching career, would call him and ask for advice on certain things. One of the great coaches we had here a long time ago, his name was Doug Perry, and he gave me my first opportunity to help with the football team. And he was a fantastic mentor. He actually kind of took me under his wing and said, "Okay, if you're going to be a head coach, let's talk, and let's get you some things that you're going to need in the future." And so that was amazing. And then, those are some real people that had some real influence on my athletic career and then into coaching. So
those are great. Thanks for sharing it. I'm smiling because I go so far back with Bear River that Dan Cox was the head coach there. Yeah. Back when in the Bear River days, back when I was coaching. So that's I
played for Dan. I was a freshman Dan's last year here, so I loved it. I didn't really get a chance to be coached by Dan, but I think Dan was a great guy. He was fantastic for Bear River football for sure.
Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question, Clay. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
You said that question. I had to think about that one for a minute. I think my biggest failure was probably with one of the ways that I handled my own kids in athletics early. I had to learn the hard way that as a parent that's coaching your kid, that's tough to do. And you got to be really conscious of how you treat your own kids versus how you treat other kids. My oldest son, he ended up being a pretty good swimmer, got a chance to swim in college, and is going to graduate from college this year, but obviously being a baseball coach, trying to get him to like baseball as a kid, and he did, and he still does enjoy baseball, but wasn't great at baseball. He was a fantastic swimmer, but he wasn't great at baseball. And I found myself being frustrated with when he would make an error or whatever. I think I felt like that was a personal failure on my part, that he wasn't, he couldn't do things that I thought he should do all the time. And it took him as a 12-year-old grabbing me one day and saying, "Hey, Dad, if I'm going to play baseball, you got to treat me like you treat everybody else. Because when they make an error, you're okay with it. You're always super positive. And when I make an error, man, you're all down my throat, and it's the end of the world." And that really opened my eyes. I really honestly, I felt like a failure that I'd failed him as just a young person of, my dad's my coach, and I like that, versus my dad's my coach, and that's a pain in the butt. And so I had to learn that, and that's the thing that I really took away from that, is those experiences for all of our kids. They're their experiences, and they have to go through them, and it's not up to us to relive our experiences or try to live through their experiences. We should just be there to support and love them, and say, "Hey, whatever it is you need my help with, I'm there to help you." I wish I would have learned that a little bit earlier, because I think we could have had a better relationship a lot earlier had I done that. We have a great relationship now. We talk on the phone. He goes to school in Idaho, and we talk on the phone several times a week, and he calls me all the time now. But growing up, that relationship was strained because I just had never learned how to separate those two things. So yeah,
that's some great insight. Thanks for sharing that. Let's have you discuss a little bit more with our audience. We know you coach baseball, but what then led to you getting the job? I realize Van left, and that's when you got the job of AD. But talk about what led you into coaching and then into being the AD a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, I just the year that I coached, right after I got off my mission, I just enjoyed it so much. I really loved. I was probably not quite done playing, to be honest with you. I think all of us kind of go through that when we're young. But I wasn't good enough to play in college. I was nowhere near that kind of a player. And so I still got my fix of athletics by coaching a little bit. And I was young and brash and stupid and did a lot of dumb things when I was a young coach, and wish I could go back and fix those things. But I just loved being with kids. My favorite part of coaching, honestly, was practice. I loved organizing practice and running an effective, efficient practice that kids got better at, and seeing them increase their talents and their love of whatever sport they were doing. And so that when I got out of athletics, as far as when I got the administration jobs at our district, they don't let our administrators coach. And so that was tough, because I had to make a decision. And that was, the HR guy pulled me at the time, and he said, we want to offer you this administration job, but you need to understand that means you're done coaching. And I said, I need a minute, and I went home and talked to my wife. And at the time we decided to do that. And it was a good decision for me, but I missed coaching. And I still really miss the day-to-day with kids and being in practice and stuff. But when the opportunity came up to come back to the high school as an administrator, I actually asked to work closely with Van, mostly because he's just a super friend of mine. But just to sort of learn the ropes and to see what he does and how he handles things, and with the idea in mind that there could possibly come a time where that might be something I would put my name in the hat for. And I think for Van, that happened a little sooner than he thought it was going to, just for some health reasons. And so, that's when it came up. Then I feel like my experience I was an assistant football coach for a long, long time as well. And then as I'd been here for 4 years before Van retired. And so I had been helping him with all of the athletics as well. I was kind of the admin over athletics. And so we'd been doing a lot of stuff together. So for me, it was just a natural progression of adding that to my resume as well.
Let's have you talk for a moment, Clay, about how the job of AD has changed just in the short time that you've had the job.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out, to be honest with you. It's kind of a whirlwind. But I think it's like education in general. Teachers have been called on to do more and more and more things inside of their classroom, and almost become parents, if you will. And without really any other support systems to go with that. And I think that's probably a lot that's happened with the athletic director. You know, I remember way back when the athletic director was a stipend position that you just did after school. When I first started coaching, you know, Hunter Barris was the AD at the time, and great guy, and he taught school all day long, and then after school he'd spend a couple hours doing AD work, right? And now it's almost every AD is a full-time athletic director in their building, and that's really all that they do. And so the responsibilities and the liabilities and the job has just grown exponentially over the years. But yeah, the last 2 years, this is the first year I've been on the ADEC committee, which has been fantastic. I've loved that. I've loved getting together with a lot of the other ADs in the state and just visiting and talking and discussing things. I don't think you realize just how much goes on at the state level until you get into those things and realize, you know, it's not just oh, they meet a couple of times a month and it's you know over. There's a lot that goes into that. So that's been very eye-opening, and I think even more responsibility and accountability placed on us that are within that group to try and represent and hold that stuff down for the other coaches when they need that.
Let's follow up with that then. Let's talk about how did you hear about the UIAAA? How did you become involved? You mentioned now you're on the ADEC, so let's speak to that for a moment.
I think it started that I was the one that said I would do it, to be honest with you, out of our region, because all the other athletic directors in our region have been there for quite a while. And so they've all taken kind of a turn and done that. And I hadn't yet, obviously only being my second year, but I was happy to do that. When they said, does anybody want to volunteer? I said, I would love to, if that's something that you want me to be a rep for. And all the ADs in my region were very complimentary about that. And so that's kind of how that came about. It was kind of my turn because I hadn't, you know, and they're all older, but it's been very eye-opening. I've been very pleased at just the camaraderie that's there within the athletic directors in the state, and how those discussions are sometimes hard to have. I think we've had tough discussions in those meetings, but they're always respectful and they're always looking out for what's best for kids and schools. And so even though we may not always agree on how to run stuff or how to do things specifically, I think all of us have respect for each other and know we're doing the best we can there. So I think it's a great organization, and I think that they do a great job and a great service for our athletics in the state.
Have you been to the state conference?
Yes, I went last year. So looking forward to going again. That. Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. You know, my favorite part of the state conference last year was that we did a Q&A with the executive committee. I thought that was fantastic for us to, you know, I know that was tough on them. I'll be honest with you. I think that was a hard situation to put them in because they don't know the questions that are coming. And they kind of were all over the place, and that some of them were tough questions, and thought they did a great job of trying to answer those as best that they could. And I gained a really good appreciation for what they go through as well on the back end of that. So yeah, I love the conference. I thought I got a lot of really good stuff out of that. Looking forward to going again this year.
Excellent. Now, this next question's a little bit off the topic. It's the only time I've asked I guess this question because, well, let's get to the question. Speak about working with my neighbor as a kid. So AJ Gilmore was a kid. He was like a teenager, lived across the street from me growing up, and now here he is, principal at Bear River. So obviously my memories of AJ are when he was younger, and he may have done one or two dumb things, but I remember him being a good kid. But the question is, what's it like now? Because I found out he was the principal up there, and I thought, oh, that's just so great. Good for him. But talk about AJ, because I remember him as a great kid.
Yeah, no, he's awesome to work for. He's very supportive of athletics. You know, I think he played basketball, and he talks about his rugby days from Skyline High School all the time. And I think he loves sports. He knows the value of what the athletic programs can and do bring into a school, and just how much that can really unite a school and a culture. And so he's great with that. He's always been extremely supportive. He's very, very innovative. in saying, hey, why couldn't we do this? And, like, I don't know, it sounds like we should try it. And so very, very willing to work that way. It's interesting because my mom, going back to my mom, she was the principal of the intermediate school where he got hired at when he very, very first started in education. So I remember he's got a fun young family that they're growing up. And so I'm hoping he stays here for a little while longer, but his kids actually go to Box Elder. So I don't know how much time we have, because obviously he's going to want to go watch some of the things that they're doing there. But they live in Corinne, and his kids go to Box Elder. But no, he's great to work with. And I think he and I get along really well and see things a lot the same when it comes to athletics, for sure.
So that living in Corinne brings up a question that I didn't send you. How often do you get out to the Golden Spike? And the only reason I ask that is I've been there a few times, but like, people ask me how often I visit the Great Salt Lake from all over the U.S. and I live here and I never go there. So I'm wondering if it's the same up there.
Same. Yeah. Like, I've been out there a couple of times. There's not a lot to see. I mean, if you've ever been out there, you can do the whole trip in about a half an hour. Now, if you want to go into the museum and do some other stuff, you can spend a little bit more time, but it's not really a destination site. You don't stay there. There's not a hotel or anything. So
no,
it's really a cool thing to go out and look at, because there's a ton of history. And actually my family owned some land fairly close to there. So, we would go out that way a lot. And there's a lot of, on the way there's a lot of old immigrant camps where when they were building the railroad, they would stay in these camps. And you can kind of see, especially Chinese immigrants on our side did a lot of the work that were out there. And there's a lot of those camps you can stop at and look at. Those are pretty interesting. But yeah, don't get out there too often.
No, last time I was there was during the COVID year.
Oh, yeah.
We stopped at a place that I never knew existed called Chinese Arch. It's a little arch that I never knew was there. I took a picture, and we actually went out to the spiral jetty because the lake was low.
Yeah. Like I said, you drive, it takes longer to drive there than it does to actually see what's there. But
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Clay, what's one common myth about being a director of athletics that you'd like to debunk?
Common myth that we can change everything all at once. I think part of your job is to deal with parents and frustrations. And I've been a parent, and I've been a frustrated parent. So I get that. And that's part of our job. And when we accept that, sometimes it's really difficult to talk to parents and say, I understand where you're coming from, and we're working on those things, but it's not going to, I don't have a magic wand that I can wave and it's just going to be perfect, the next 5 minutes or the next 5 weeks or whatever. And so I think that sometimes they come in and feel like, well, you're in charge, so you can make the changes. And it's not that we can't make changes or that we can't influence and we can't help and grow. And we know our coaches aren't perfect. And we know, our coaches are doing this for the love of the game. Let's be honest. They don't get paid enough to call it a career. They just don't. If they happen to be a teacher, then it's a little bit extra pay. But you probably know that now there's lots of what we call paraprofessionals that aren't even they're not even teachers. They almost volunteer their time, to be honest with you, just because they love the game. And so when parents get a little frustrated, I think that they think that things can be switched quickly, even just by switching a coach, which is, it's not really the case. And so, it takes some time. If you're going to make lasting and real changes, that those take some time, and they take some, crucial conversations, and they take some work. And sometimes that's not what they like to hear. So yeah, I think that might be the biggest one, is things aren't going to change overnight. Sorry.
What's your favorite part of your job, being the AD?
I just love being around the kids. So as an assistant principal, you generally kind of see the kids are always in trouble, right? You're always over disciplined. So somebody's always in your office talking about why they're vaping or why they're sloughing school or why they're doing something stupid. And I love those kids because I get a chance to work with them and mentor some of those kids. But I love, generally in athletics, you get the kids that are motivated and they're driven and they've got life ambitions. And I don't see those guys in my office very often. And so being able to be the athletic director and go out and, set up the field for a lacrosse game and go talk to those kids as they get ready and then watch them play, and then talk to them in the halls after and talk to them about the games that they play, and being with the coaches and being able to influence that. I think one of the funnest things that I've done, we just barely started this year, was we started up a SALT program at our school, student athlete leadership team. We have about 60 kids that come at 6:30 in the morning twice a month, and we talk about lots of different things. We do some service projects, and that has been an absolute joy just to see just how good of kids we really do have. Sometimes we don't recognize those kids all the time, that they really are great kids and they do a lot of really good things. We tend to see the negatives a lot, and so for me that's been outstanding. I've loved that.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. Let's finish up with a couple of questions, Clay. The first being, I need Clay's suggestions for a brand new AD. And of course, you're fairly new yourself, but I need this new AD to follow your suggestions in order to be a success. What would your two suggestions be?
Number one, make sure you have good people around you. Right now, I have a fantastic secretary who really keeps me on track and makes sure that I'm good. So I think you have to surround yourself with the right people, and people who will be in your corner and know what you need when you need it. So I think that's one thing. And then the other thing is just don't be afraid to go in and ask questions. You have to run things the way that you run things. You can't be somebody else. One of my biggest fears coming into this job was I followed Van after 16 years, and anybody that knows Van, including myself, think he walks on water most of the time. And I knew I wasn't Van. That's just, my personality is not the same as his, and I don't handle things exactly the same. And so I think you have to be brave enough to be who you are, but be willing to listen to ways that you can get better and you can be more effective in your job. And so I think those two things, surround yourself with good people and don't be afraid to be you. I think those are two huge things going into any leadership position, but especially athletics for sure.
Great suggestions. Thanks so much for sharing. We're going to finish with this. Clay, what questions should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Oh, I don't know. No, those were great questions. I think those were fun to answer. I think maybe just what you kind of touched on, the thing we have the hardest time overcoming right now is just perceptions of what people think we can and can't do, and we can and can't influence sometimes. And so, how do we get parents to be on our side and working together, and getting the best experience for kids that we can, because I think that's what we're ultimately all in it for. That's why we got into the profession, is to help kids get out of athletics what we got out of athletics and how it shaped us. We want to shape kids. And so I think helping parents understand that, and however we can do that, I think is important.
Well said. On that note, that wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Clay Chournos, the Director of Athletics at Bear River High School in Garland, Utah. Clay, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.